welcome to episode 10 of the Moody Gooners podcast. Welcome today. Jason is, as usual, my co-host. How you doing, Jason?
I'm all right. I'm good. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. So thanks everyone for joining. Before we go through, just a quick reminder of what we're all about. So essentially, our sort of mission is basically is an Arsenal podcast with a difference, and that difference being combining our passion for all things Arsenal related with the importance of keeping mental health at the top of the agenda. So not only that, but all the proceeds from our weekly predictions will be donated at the end of the season to Mind, which is our charity of choice. So thanks to everyone for joining us today. We're going to do similar kind of format. It's going to probably be a slightly shorter show than normal. Probably a bit of an end of season dead rubber really kind of feel about the game yesterday, but we're going to talk about the match. And then we're going to kind of dive into where we think that leaves us into the summer, and then we're going to have a quick sort of run through of this current squad, and we're going to go through kind of a sell or keep scenario and have a quick chat around what we think or what we would like the manager to do as far as incomings, based on what's realistic given the Champions League money and that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I think we jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So Jason, talk to me then about your overriding feelings going into the game. I mean, you mentioned before we jumped on the call that you had a few sort of interesting things popped out at you as far as the team news was concerned prior to the game. Interested to know what that is and what you sort of thought of it really.
So, I mean, I didn't watch the match. I must admit, I hold my hands up. Sorry, Gooners, but I didn't watch it. I was looking after my little boy. But I've seen all the highlights, extended highlights and such. And I think the first thing I'd say is that I was feeling very relaxed. As Paul, as you just said, mate, it was a bit of an end of season game, and the way that it panned out, it reminded me of what happened at the end of last season when we put, I think it was 5 past Everton on the last day of the season, where there wasn't really much to play for, and so it kind of panned out in the way that I expected it to. Going on to the sort of lineup, I was quite surprised. I was expecting a few more sort of the fringe players to get a start. I think there was discussion I'd seen in some of the sort of media outlets that in the week that Saka may have had picked up a knock or something, and I was expecting maybe Smith Rowe to come in. So I would have thought maybe Nelson had a game. I think there's also talk of him maybe signing a new contract. Maybe they've had a breakthrough, third time lucky with that. So I was thinking maybe a few players would have been given a shot, especially sort of last game of the season.
Do you think that Arteta's selection, the relatively stronger selection, was maybe as a result of the fact that we had, dropped points in games leading to this one, that maybe in his mind he probably saw this game as being more important than maybe what a majority of the fans and the media thought, in the sense that most people thought, well, it doesn't really matter what happens, we're going to finish second? Or do you think he wanted to kind of send that message that actually every game matters? That's kind of the way I saw it. And I think there's a wider discussion there as well around, how important are pre-season games? Most people say no, but kind of wonder how good, the good pre-season we had. You do go into seasons still carrying some of that momentum from pre-season and what happened at the end of the season before. So I'm kind of curious to see what you think around that, really, because he did go. I agree with you that there's no reason to play Saka again. I mean, Saka's called up to the England squad for these meaningless games in June. But yeah, what were your thoughts around that?
Well, I mean, again, look, Saka's now. I mean, he's now just complete. He's played in every Premier League game for us now for the last. Well, the season obviously finished yesterday. He's now played every game for the last 2 seasons for us. He hasn't missed a game. I mean, I think he's come off a few times or whatever, or I think maybe, but I think he's pretty much nailed on started every game, which is incredible. But also, I mean, I think for me the result was sort of never in doubt. I genuinely thought we were going to win quite comfortably yesterday, and so it panned out. I think when we get to the predictions, we'll see that I finally got one right. I have to put my hand in my pocket again. But I just think, it would have been a chance. I mean, we're not saying that these players are bad players. They wouldn't have diminished the value of the game, I think, by giving someone like Smith Rowe and Nelson, more minutes, or starting them, and then maybe bringing Saka on 60 minutes or something. I just think he probably could have mixed it up a little bit. I mean, he still went with Thomas Partey at right back again, which, I mean, we discussed that at length in the last podcast, which I thought was again, I don't know why. I mean, it just seems a bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's been a little bit out of form in recent weeks, but I think the opportunity cost is that by playing him there, you then take away what he does so well in the centre of the park. And again, I'm not saying that he's been on some kind of scintillating form of late, but yeah, it is kind of
a bit odd, isn't it? It's just a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, you couldn't have to say he's kind of right though at the end of it, because we still won the game pretty handsomely in the end. But I
wouldn't read too much into that. I mean, Wolves were completely off it. That defending was just, well, it was a joke. It was a joke. I mean, some of the goals and whatever they conceded were just, it was laughable. So I'm not reading too much into the. You can only be, you're as good as the team that you're facing, and they were just garbage, and we just absolutely. I don't think we really needed to get out of third gear to sort of roll them over. They just didn't turn up. They just weren't interested, in my view. And so yeah. What am I trying to say here? Get my words muddled up here. I just think that it just definitely had that sort of end of season dead rubber game to it. The result was never in doubt. Wolves didn't show up, and I just think that I think Arteta could have just mixed it up a little bit, given some of the guys that have been on the bench being patient, that he could have given them a bit of an opportunity, or a little bit more, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I know that formation is not necessarily how it plays out in reality. With players obviously a lot more fluid these days in terms of how they move around the pitch, but I really don't like this idea of Kiwior left back and Partey at right back. To be honest, it's just
it doesn't work, does it? It's just they're just not meant to be there.
I mean, Kiwior just by looking stylistically, he's a centre half. Right? There's no two ways about it. There's not even. I don't know. Like when you watch Ben White play at right back at the start of the season, I think that kind of caught people by surprise. But very quickly, you see, quite quickly, you say, well, he can overlap. He can tuck inside slightly and help with build up. He gallops around the back, hangs balls up at the far post, but there's no way you're getting that from Kiwior in his current state. And with Partey, like, he doesn't get down the flanks either. And I think you kind of remove some of your own attacking threat when that happens, because your fullbacks these days are so integral to the way teams attack, ironically, even though they're quintessentially defenders. But very strange, I think, and plus you've got Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney came on, but you've got Tierney on the bench, and Tierney must be sitting there now going, well,
what kind of message does it send to him? I mean, how does he
see? He's done, isn't he? He's
got to be. I mean, the poor guy. I mean, I'd love him to stay. I love Tesco. I mean, I'd love him to stay there for us, but the poor guy. I mean, if he's got Jakub Kiwior playing in front of him at left back when our first choice left back is out, I mean, his days are numbered. They got.
Yeah, he's toast, I think, as far as playing for Arsenal, which is sad, because you do need. He's got his limitations for sure, but you need players in your squad that can come in and add something. All the top teams in Europe have almost two players for each position, and to not have a decent reserve left back that can come in. I mean, he should theoretically have had 4 or 5 games at the end of this season playing to sort of make or break his Arsenal career, really, because I can't imagine him being the kind of guy that's had a falling out with Arteta behind the scenes. But Zinchenko's now been out for a few games, and he just hasn't had a look in, which is I think we're both in agreement on that. I think the rest of the team sort of loosely picked itself.
Yeah.
For me, I think the front line picks itself at the moment, with Martinelli out, injured, and Jorginho is obviously playing quite well at the moment, so he's kind of undroppable really in the centre. He
played really well. Some of his sort of like pre-assists, if you like the one for Saka, I think I mean, it was really quite simple, but he's got to sort of see the pass, and then there was the one for Jesus' goal where he kind of played it over the top into the inside channel for Trossard to get on. So Jorginho, I thought, I mean, he's really sort of. I mean, that was that's the best ever buy we've had from Chelsea.
I know.
You know,
he's the only good buy.
Yeah,
he's the
only decent player we've signed from them.
Dumpster,
Everyone else
dumpster diving around Stamford Bridge.
Exactly,
You know, it's finally paid off.
Yeah, so fair play to this one. We managed to get that one right, I think, for the first time. What was your thoughts? I mean, you surprised at all, or do you think that you want to pick your best 11 every single game, regardless of circumstances?
Do you know what I mean? I think at the end of the day, when as fans, we're not privy to all the data scientists and all the numbers and things like that. I'm actually all right with playing a strong team. At the end of the day, we've got one game a week at the moment, or we had one game a week. So for me, it's not a problem. It's not a problem, to be honest with you. And I think if we'd gone and slaughtered teams coming into this game, and maybe he might have done it, but I think now we've had a good result there. I know it's has nothing on the game, no jeopardy against it, but I think now we can at least go into pre-season game. We finished on a bit of a high. We've got 84 points, great result. The numbers around yesterday is basically the most prolific season we've had in terms of goal scoring in a Premier League season. I think is it 88 goals?
88, yeah. I saw that.
So that's the most
brilliant.
That's fantastic.
That's outrageous, considering that we have, we haven't got an Erling Haaland in our squad, and we've still, or if you think about it, we haven't got that striker that's got 20 plus goals in them to get to 88. I mean, that's phenomenal. That really, I've hats off to the team. You can see that it's a proper team that's doing that. I mean, I think it was Saka got his 15th yesterday of the season. I mean, where's the ceiling for this kid? This unbelievable player.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm not obsessed with having one. So I think I'm not saying I wouldn't like Haaland in our squad. Of course I would, but it does. I think once teams do find a way to, not that I don't think you're ever going to completely nullify his threat, but a way to kind of limit his threat a bit more, they might struggle a bit more, City, because they haven't really. When you've got this big, tall, strong guy up the middle of the pitch there, you naturally just play to that player essentially. But what I like about Arsenal is we do carry goals from Odegaard scored, Martinelli scored, Jesus has plenty of goal involvements. Granit Xhaka, we're going to get onto him shortly, but
I know.
Absolutely got 7 goals and 7 assists. I say 9 goals now, including the game, and 7 assists. It's absolutely outrageous for a guy that was basically defensive midfielder. But it's funny, after the game, Arteta was saying, who said he's leaving in the press conference? Like, well, Fabrizio Romano says he's leaving, and he's gone, mate. Yeah, he needs to get onto his socials and get himself up to.
I'm sure Ornstein's put something out there as well that he's off. Yeah. Leverkusen are in for him. I mean, so let's dive into the game a little bit. I mean, you're not gonna go into too much depth over it, but I mean, for me, the game was over after 27 minutes. Really, it was all done and dusted. The sort of, I mean, Wolves were their own worst enemies. The defending was just shocking. The first goal, 11 minutes in, Granit Xhaka. I mean, if it does turn out to be his sort of swan song, his last game, what a way to cap it. Man of the match performance, 11 minutes in, bang, goal. Lovely little dummy from Jesus. I mean, the build-up was great. It was just so easy. It was passed up from the back into Jorginho in that sort of deep channel, and then he just plays it through to Saka, and then a lovely little not Saka, Jesus, sorry, on the right, and then lovely little shimmy, delayed the cross a bit, hung it up, and Jack at the back post. It was so easy.
It was effortless. Yeah, and actually, the thing I saw from that goal as well is how much did you read into the fact that Jesus off the right, could he be a player that they could maybe we do sign a number 9 and then have Jesus competing for. I'm not saying you bench Jesus straight off the bench because he is obviously he does obviously add value to what we're doing, but when I saw the way that he kind of was involved in that goal. I mean, he obviously wasn't being closed down particularly great, but the way he sort of drove and ran and then beautiful little cross into the box. I was looking at that going, wow, maybe it actually opened my eyes to this idea of maybe signing a number, not trying to sign like a Pedro Neto or a Moussa Diaby or whoever we're going to be linked with, but maybe we just shunt Jesus out there, every now and then to keep Saka on his toes, and then we go for a more of a central kind of player. I don't know what you thought about that, because it was some pretty nice wing play. It was pretty slick.
It's great, isn't it?
And he put the ball on right on the money for our goal machine, Granit Xhaka.
The goal machine. he was the card machine a couple of seasons ago. Now he's the gold machine. So what I think the problem for Gabriel Jesus, and if you think back to when we signed him, there was talk. I remember there was the Brazilian or the South American football correspondent for the BBC. I forget his name. He was talking about
Tim Vickery.
Is it Tim Vickery? Phil no.
He's a rugby player.
I think it's Tim Vickery. Tim Vickery, yeah, that's the one. He was saying that Gabriel Jesus is that sort of wide attacker, but then there was always that talk of is he gonna play central for us? And I think the problem for him as a player is that he is that good. He's got that versatility in him that he can be played out wide. Now, what might end up happening to him is the same thing that happened to him at City, is that as a result of his versatility to sort of drift out wide and have that impact with that direct running, which is what he did for that sort of first goal, he may end up being that sort of player that does a bit of both instead of just being the main number 9. And you raise a good point. We were talking about squad depth, and we'll get into it a bit later, but instead of going to sign like a right winger in the summer, maybe we've got it within the squad already, and we just get that another forward up front to give us more goal threat, from a sort of central position, and then Jesus can, come in and out. There's going to be plenty of games next season for sure. So
exactly. I look at it as well is we are going to, by all accounts, I mean, obviously if Xhaka's going, we're obviously going to invest in our midfield, aren't we? I mean, I think there's no two ways about that, and it's not going to come cheap, the profile of player we're going for. So I think it does make me think, okay, maybe there's a little bit of something there. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it was a nice goal. And I mean, and then second one sort of unmarked and swept it home. I mean, I couldn't believe when I saw the score and see saw who'd made it onto the goal sheet, the score sheet. To be honest, he was absolutely mad. And then he could have had a hat trick. He sort of took a scruffy little air shot, and I was hang on a minute.
Like just after the third goal, wasn't he? He had that sort of. It was a nice little marauding. I think it was a marauding run from Ben White, and then he played out wide. Again, at Saka and Odegaard, I've got to say, their combination together, they are so on the same page and the same wavelength as each other. It was wonderful to see, and the little build-up play from them. It breaks to Jack in the box. He slices it wide, but. That would have just been too perfect, a hat trick for Granit Xhaka on potentially his last game would have just been something else.
Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable stuff, and it's good to see as well Saka in on the goals as well. I thought the way he sort of dropped his shoulder and sold that dummy, it was absolutely slick as you like. I mean, he was in on a nice angle, but he kind of made that chance for himself just with a little drop of the shoulder, a little bit of explosivity.
It was brilliant. Yeah. Shifted his body weight to come back inside to create the opening, and the finish was just sublime. It was just, it was outrageous. Only a player like him can do that. It reminded me a little bit like what sort of Henry used to do back in the day. Where he sort of created that space and opened his body up. So it was brilliant, just wonderful stuff. Yeah. It's just sort of beautiful stuff.
The finish was superb. He just made it all
poetry, man.
I know, but it's a shame that we could have done with that goal, against Brighton, or But I must admit, I mean, we'll get onto this at the end, but it does all the way we played and the scoreline. It can't help but it almost frustrates a bit more than makes you happy, because you think, God, such a lovely feeling, and I mean, every result's important, I think, to different levels of importance, but there is that element of it for me.
I wouldn't get sucked into the fact that we put 5 past walls and we were playing beautiful football. It's the because of the circumstances. Wolves were on holiday. Arsenal just wanted to go out with a bang. We've been up and down, with form over the last couple of months. So I just think you can't read too much into it, but it was just, nevertheless, it was just beautiful to see that we can do that to teams, and we've got that in the locker. But yeah, just incredible play. And by that point, after the third goal had gone in, the game was over. Then it was just a sort of exhibition match then, really. What we had there, a chance from Trossard as well, driven effort. That was he smashed it so hard, and it was pinpoint accuracy. And the goalie sort of pinned it wide.
I think Jose Sarr did get a slight touch on it in the second half.
Yeah. The fourth goal, Jesus, 58 mins.
He's good in the air, isn't he, Jesus?
This is what I've put down. I didn't realise he was that good in the air, because it was brilliant to play to the build up. The pass from Jorginho. It was very clever from Trossard, because obviously he was ahead of everybody else and he had to wait for support, and he delayed that cross, and he just sort of pinged it up and sort of left it hanging at the far post. And what a header! I did not know he had that in his locker. It was brilliant. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, it was superb, wasn't it? I mean, and Trossard there with an assist. He sort of stands up Semedo and just clips that left-footed ball, and then it's from quite a tight angle as well. And it's not like a close range header. He's kind of almost running away from goal, and he's pretty much like getting towards the edge of the 6-yard box when he almost has to hit it with the side of his head, but powered down nice and low under Jose Sarr for the fourth. And it's strange with Jesus. I feel like he's gone a little bit under the radar in recent games, but actually when you look at his output and his numbers this season, he's actually had an all right.
But some of this missed 4 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's been all right. I'm happy. I'm happy with him, to be honest. Like, he's had 12 goals and 6 assists, so it's not bad. I mean, goals wise, I'd say half decent for a guy who's missed 3 months of the season. Not so many assists actually for someone who's so involved in the build up of play, but to be honest with you, very happy. I think he's and the great thing with him and the majority of our squad is that there's more to come. That's the beauty of this whole project. As long as that more to come actually does come and deliver trophies at the end of it. It can't just be, oh, we're going to be good in a year. We're going to be. There has to be a point where you go, right, it's got to deliver now. It's got to deliver silverware.
Absolutely.
But I think he's been very good. A very good signing, to be honest. Very happy.
What it says to me, those numbers that you just said there, if you go back to that earlier stat that we sort of brought up, the 88 goals that we've scored, and then you put Jesus's 12 into that, so that means the rest of the team has collectively delivered that amount of goals, and Jesus has just added 12. I mean, that's fantastic. I love the fact that it's not. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to have Haaland, but I love the fact that collectively as a team we're delivering on the goals, and we're not just relying on one player, which I think is brilliant. I mean, I'd love to have like 25 goals or so from him, but I think if that happened, that would then subtract from the way that we play. We don't need him to playing into him and then bang. It's just I don't want to sound a bit sour grapes here, but I feel that would be a bit boring, really. It'd be a bit too predictable. I quite like the fact that it's all mixed up and it's shared amongst the squad. I like that.
I think there's power in that as well, because I think it then means if one player is out, the other players, like imagine Haaland got injured for City, for example, or De Bruyne. I mean, they would still win the majority of their games, so they have a lot of depth, but that would absolutely hit their front line for 6. Whereas for us, like it was proof in the pudding. Jesus was out of the squad. We signed Trossard. He hit the ground running with assists and getting involved, I think it's actually a much more sustainable thing, because you can afford to wear an injury or two here and there and still be sort of efficient in front of goal. I think that's something that I'm quite happy about. So, and actually, if Jesus suddenly did score 30 goals, you probably might find there'd be no goals from whoever's in Xhaka's position. There'd be no goals from, they'll probably dry up in other areas. It's just the way football seems to be, almost.
Or we win the Champions League, if he does that.
Yeah, I mean, if he got 25 goals and then the other guys were still notching as well, then
exactly.
But I don't feel like he gets as many clear sights as goal as say like an Aubameyang. I remember Aubameyang used to sort of butcher one or two absolute golden opportunities per game, but then that third one he'd invariably score. Whereas I find with Jesus, he's doing so much for the team, and when he does get in front of goal. I don't actually recall him. I remember he missed one against Fulham when he came back from his injury, but I think he did butcher a few before the World Cup, but I feel like he's actually become a bit more clinical since the World Cup break and since coming back from injury. I feel like now he's probably getting less sights at goal, but he's able to kind of make stuff happen. I mean, the header at Anfield and then the goal yesterday, showing kind of much more sort of strings to bow there.
I think the thing that he needs to work on from a goal scoring perspective is his positioning. If he wants more goals, I think he needs to take up a better position for goals, because he does seem to come deep quite a lot. Like that he sort of floats around the corner around the edge of the penalty box. And then he does these sort of darting runs, slightly to the right or to the left or something. So, but if he wants the goals, he needs to be in the middle. He needs to take up a bit more of a sort of, and then sort of, move the defenders around, run in front of them, that sort of thing that Giroud used to do, where the ball would come in and he'd ghost in front of the defender and get a toe on the end of it, sort of thing. If he wants if Jesus wants to bang the goals in for the team, he needs to take up better positioning, I think. But is that then going to affect the way that we play?
I think it 100% will, because when he does pull out of those places, he's invariably putting a defender with him, and he's kind of like he's sitting in that kind of middle ground between the defensive line and the midfield line, and the midfielders looking behind, going, who's going to pick him up? The defenders don't want to get drawn out too much.
Yeah.
So I think it's I almost feel with him that you can have it one way and not the other, and it is kind of effective to a point. But I think we'll probably get onto it when we talk about potential incomings and what we think Arteta should do. Maybe what he will do is a totally separate thing. But 4-0, and then what Jakub Kiwior with his first goal, corner in, Kiwior gets a head on it, the ball's bobbling around, he swings his right peg on it, and Jose Sá, I mean, absolutely,
he's had a clanger. Do you know what I love? Do you know what I love so much about this goal? And he didn't know anything about this because it sort of sprung him by surprise. Is that Emile Smith-Rowe has been credited with an assist for that goal? Because it sort of grazed off his chest and sort of fell for Kiwior, that he's been given an assist for that. So I just love that. I mean, what can you? It just sort of summed up Wolves' defending for the whole day. The corner comes in and it's just sort of not cleared, half dealt with, pings around a bit. Comes off Smith-Rowe's chest, falls for Kiwior, and then Jose Sá's had he's had a nightmare. Just sort of bundled it into the back of the goal. Terrible stuff, but it's just funny to see, funny to watch. That's all.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
And it just go on.
Yeah, no, shoot. Carry on. What you're going to say?
I was going to say that obviously end of the game sort of played out, and we're finished the season 84 points. Very similar kind of feel about the game last season.
Yeah,
I think, and obviously we had the the lap of honour and the players' families on the pitch, all those nice warm fuzzy feels. But I don't know, sometimes it does just, again, I'm being a bit old school, but I'm looking at it going, right, come on. I think the players definitely did deserve a great ovation, but it's still that feeling of what might have been for me. And when the pressure's off, the goals start flying in and things like, we've really got to make sure that we arrive in April next year ready to win, ready to actually get over the line on some of the stuff. I think the longer you go without doing it, the harder it gets. We have got, over the line in the cups a few times in recent seasons, but I think we've got to make sure that we're not having these nice chilled out days in the sunshine at the Emirates in May. I want there to be a trophy at the end of it, really, as we all do. But yeah, you can't. I mean, 84 points, solid return. I think the goal scoring aspects really solid. Obviously, I think the main thing really was the defending at home. I think that was one of a few clean sheets that we had at home this season. To be honest with you, I think we're probably looking at 5 or less, clean sheets for Arsenal at home, and I think that's kind of been our undoing. Really, I think the defensive injuries and instability is probably what's been the thing to.
Saliba injury for me. It's that's after that Sporting game, it all sort of started to sort of unravel a bit. I think from then, it sort of unsettled us, I think, a little bit, and then with the injury and him being out, it was just we just didn't have the depth.
Yeah,
and I briefly mentioned this stat to you. A Match of the Day brought this up. We had the fewest changes to the starting 11 all season. We had 38 changes to the starting 11. Next on the list were Newcastle with 54. So that tells you, that's the one stat that for me tells the story of where we're at as a squad, as a club. He's put so much faith in his sort of starting 11, call it, 12, 13 players or so, that small pool of players he's got. And that's evident in the fact that some of the sort of fringe players have not got the minutes. He's put all his faith in those players, and they've just run out of steam. And there just isn't the depth. And we've spoken about this, that the sort of drop off in quality just isn't there when you need to dip into it. And that's been the shortfall this season. I mean, I can't see it any other way.
So you wouldn't put any, because again, I mean, at the end of the day, squad players generally are not as good as, even though City have, obviously.
But that's the benchmark. That's the benchmark, unfortunately.
But their bench players are not as good as their first 11 players, really. But do you think, how much of it do you put down to injuries to the players? Because when I think about who, if all of the Arsenal squad were fit, basically, we would potentially have a bench of, Matt Turner, USA goalie in the World Cup, Tomiyasu, basically one of the most experienced players in the Japan team, Tierney, starter for Scotland, he's played in the Champions League for Celtic, Smith Rowe, joint top scorer last season, potentially Fabio Vieira, Eddie Nketiah. I appreciate Eddie Nketiah, and Fabio Vieira haven't, probably not quite at the level of what, Alcaraz and things like that. But when I look at the bench that we have, again, you probably put Jorginho in on that, who's won the Euro. So I think our bench is actually okay. There's definitely an upgrade or two we can make here and there, but I'm not sure that our bench is terrible, to be honest. I mean, we made 3 incomings in January, but I think we've been unlucky with injuries just at the wrong time of the season. And how much would you put down this depth thing that you're talking about here compared to mentality? Because for me, I think sometimes when it comes to the league, I think we're seen as a nice club. We play nice silky football in the sunshine, at the end of the season. But do we really have that kind of killer mentality at the end to kind of say, right, only one club's going to pick up this title? I think we've improved in that area, but I still have my reservations. What's your take on that?
For me, it's down to quality in depth. We're both massive fans of Smith Rowe. We want him to stay. I want him to have more minutes. But looking at the rest of the sort of bench, you mentioned Nketiah, Vieira, they're not up to the level that we need to be aspiring to.
Yeah.
They're just not. It's nothing against them. I just, maybe Vieira will become this world beater, but I very much doubt it. If Saliba goes out, Holding comes in. Holding, no disrespect to the guy, but he's not at the level that we need. Turner you can get by with because he's a USA goalkeeper, but he's not brilliant. But he's a reserve goalkeeper. That's what you need from somebody. If he's happy to do it, then great. Tomiyasu, I think for me, the two injuries that have had the most significant impact on our season were Tomiyasu and Saliba. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did we not lose them both in the same game, in the Sporting game?
We did, yeah, we did.
That completely derailed us. It was that Sporting game where obviously the result must have had an impact on the mentality, but also those two injuries for me, they completely derailed us, because not only losing Saliba, but when you put Holding alongside Gabriel all of a sudden becomes a bit more of a liability.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think those two injuries completely ruined us, and we just didn't have a sort of fallback, around that. Now, it is unfortunate to lose two of those kind of players at the same game, but City, they didn't have Diaz for long periods of the season as well to begin with, and they managed to get by. They've got the sort of players to come in, to come in and sort of step in. Laporte was on the bench for a long parts of the season, so they've got the depth there. And if we do have true aspirations of challenging for the Premier League and the bigger sort of prizes that football has to offer, unfortunately they are the benchmark, and we need to have that depth. City, that Grealish was on the bench for a long parts of the beginning of the season. I know he's come good now, but now Foden's been on the bench a bit. They're the kind of players that we need on the bench. And we just
although
need
to be
them.
fair, like Eddie Nketiah, he's a bit hot and cold for me, to be honest. But you can't deny he did come in and make potentially a title-winning contribution.
He did.
And just FYI, Jack Grealish, so overrated. Anyway, but carry on. He dribbles forward, he turns around, and he passes it back along the floor. And his other party trick is just falling over and throwing his arms out and moaning at the ref. Like, really, 100 million? Are you kidding me? Anyway, but I know I agree. I mean, Alcaraz versus Nketiah. I know who I want in my squad.
Not
Alvarez, not the Southampton guy. God, we're having a shocker tonight. But I have to admit, like when he was scoring those goals when he came in to replace Jesus, I was quite.
Took everybody by surprise, didn't it?
That held
nobody was expecting
together,
it,
to be honest, because everyone was like, "Oh, they're going to fade now." I actually think that it was more because these days with the whole focus on pressing and things like that, I do believe that when your defenders, when Saliba went out and Tomiyasu went out, we had to defend deeper, and that affects us. That means that we're then further away from the opposition goal because our starting positions are that much closer to our own goal. I think that definitely has, and Rob Holding is more comfortable defending a bit deeper, whereas Saliba's obviously got that recovery pace and that power.
Yeah.
If he that basically allows him that luxury of playing higher up the pitch. But
with the ball at his feet, isn't he? Saliba's comfortable with the ball at his feet and playing out and passing. Holding is your old school centre back, and I'm afraid if we're going to be ruthless about this, then we need upgrades in certain areas. Just going back, I mean, it was lovely, obviously, to see some of the scenes at the end there. They were singing for Arteta at the end, I saw, which was really nice. There does seem to be a real sort of togetherness now with the fan base, and and there's a bit of a connection there now with the players. We can sort of, it feels really nice. But I'm with you that this needs to lead somewhere, and I definitely think that it will. I really do think that trophies are on the horizon. For this club, I really do. It's interesting to see. I guess we're sort of going off now into sort of where this sort of leaves us now. On what's on the horizon. A lot of the pundits. I've been watching some of the reaction from some of the Sky Sports pundits, and they've been asking them who they think are going to be the main challengers for City next season, and we're not really spoken about. It's sort of expected that this is a sort of a one-off, we're not going to get a chance again. Chelsea are going to be the main challengers. Liverpool will be back up there, maybe United. I'm thinking to myself, hang on a minute. Have you not just seen the season? Look at the sort of the core nucleus of players that we've got and what we've got to build on. And
I want to know why people are. In a way, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It means
it's not a fluke what's just happened.
Because I do think it enables us to fly a little bit under the radar. I think it took a while for people to really realise this Arsenal team was the real deal this season. I think we almost got into like almost after the World Cup break,
Yeah.
where people were going, "Oh, are we?" I remember Arsenal was going, "Are we in a title race? Are we in a title race? Are we in a title race?" We were top of the league for 93% of the season.
Yeah.
And I think the way that this all kind of comes together means that, like, I'm kind of happy because it means we can fly under the radar, but then I'm also thoroughly disgusted about it at the same time. It feels like a real bit of disrespect. At the end of the day, we've recruited well. We've got a nucleus of young, hungry, talented footballers that are going to be, big for us over the next, the coming years. And it's just a mad idea. I honestly would like to know where some of these, and it feels sometimes like these outlets, they kind of almost just like package up an opinion, and then the same opinion's being trotted out in the next place.
I get that feeling,
rather than someone actually kind of coming through and going, well, actually, this is my view on it, and this is why. But like, for me, I'm not saying we're nailed on for the Champions League, because the Premier League is so competitive that, but if you were going to tell me who are the two favourites to be in the Champions League next season, we're one of those two still. I think we all know Chelsea are in a bit of disarray. We all know Spurs are going to need a massive rebuild. We know that Liverpool can potentially come back in, but they need to buy. They need to spend a bit of money and clear a bit of dead wood out. So there's no, Man United. Yeah, I think Man United probably good chance. See Newcastle maybe. I mean, I've got a feeling weirdly that Newcastle might fall away a bit next season.
So do I. I get for some reason,
but
as well.
But to say that we're kind of like being dismissed outright, it pisses me off a bit, to be honest with you. It seems like absolute
disregard.
Bullshit.
It just seems unwarranted. It's like we've just scored 88 goals. We've missed out on the Champions League. We've had some significant injuries that have affected us purely for the fact, in my view, that it's down to depth. And if we'd managed to keep those players, I think we would have gone a damn sight closer than we have done. I'm not saying we would have won it, but it would have been a lot closer than the last couple of months had sort of left us to believe, I think. So for me, I'm with you. I think next season, absolutely, we're going to be shooting for Champions League, and I think we'll be challenging again. And I think if we get the sort of right, if we play it right in the transfer market now this summer, which by if rumours are to be believed, I think there's I think why not? Why can't we be challenging them? And, the kind of players, the caliber of players that we're being linked with, there's the links with Rice and Caicedo. They seem like quite strong links. And from the rumours, Declan Rice has his heart set on a move to us. This sounds. I can't see it any other way with us not being in the top four or challenging again. How do you see him?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think we've built ourselves a platform now. I think for me, it's key that there's going to be a lot of players for a lot. I think because of the wages that these players are on now, it's really hard to sell. Arsenal are not particularly good sellers, but if you look across the Premier League, there's lots of players out on loan. We've got to potentially shift people like Nicola Pepe along. Maitland-Niles. I think Maitland-Niles' contract comes to an end. Reiss Nelson, what's going to happen here? There'll be players that kind of coming back into the fold that we've got to deal with. But I think we've done a really good job in the last few years of clearing out a lot of dead wood, reducing our wage bill. Unfortunately, having to go through that process of paying players basically just to piss off at the end of the day, which is not great. But they're off your wage bill at that point. We had to maybe wear some of that pain financially to get to where we are now. And obviously Saka now is on quite a hefty wage with his new deal. But I love the fact that we've re-signed him. I love the fact that Martinelli's re-signed. I love the fact that Ramsdale's re-signed as well. And Odegaard apparently is now kind of he's the next one along with Saliba. And I think we've got a baseline now. We've got a core squad of good players. A relatively low wage bill versus a lot of the other bigger teams in Europe. So I think now we may now need to start to spend a bit of money. We'll probably have to increase our wage bill quite substantially, to be honest. But for me, we've got the raw assets and the core group of players that we can just build on.
Absolutely.
This season, I'm not about. I heard someone saying yesterday, we need to sign 6 players. We need this. We need that. We need this. No, like for me, it's got to be quality. First and foremost, and I'm happy with 3 players if they were absolute
3 or 4.
top quality.
That's what I was thinking. Players. 3 or 4 players. For me, it would be a centre back, a centre mid, a striker, and then maybe more of a squad type player at that point, I think.
Yeah.
But or maybe two set. I mean, it depends what happens in the midfield. I mean, we touched on it briefly, but obviously Granit Xhaka, the rumours are that he's out the door. I mean, what a way to sign off, man of the match performance.
Yeah.
A couple of goals, but I mean, if he goes,
well, that tells me we're definitely going to be buying a noteworthy midfielder, at least one very noteworthy one. But probably two, like you alluded to there. But I'm interested in what you were saying there in terms of like everywhere, everyone's talking about us needing a centre half at the moment. I don't know why we can't. I think we need a right back desperately, more so than a centre half.
Well, it depends
because we still have Saliba and Gabriel, and Tomiyasu should be back. Apparently he's going to be out until September, so he should miss the start of the next season. But once he's back in, you've got him who can play centre half. You've got Kivior, who looks to be slowly growing, well. and then my thing is like you buy top quality right back, and then you either play that player in there or you stick with Ben White, and then when there is an injury, you shunt Ben White into the middle. And so I personally, I wouldn't put centre half a priority. I'd be more like, let's probably get rid of Rob Holding, and clear a little bit off the wage bill, make Ben White the kind of replacement in there. So you're sort of strengthening that central mid defensive core. But I think with Tomiyasu, who does look quite injury prone now, I think we have to say, and if there's a top, I mean, we've been linked with that Sasha Bowie from Galatasaray. I have to say,
I don't know much about him. I know he's just a young French right back,
But and also Fresneda from Valladolid. So I'm actually not surprised we're going for a right back.
There's also links with Cancelo, from City.
Yeah.
How would you feel about that if we went back to them for another sort of fringe player? I mean, by all accounts, there's nothing wrong with his quality. It's just, it seems to be that I think there's something must have gone on in the background between Pep and him for Pep to ship him out like that.
I think most fans when he got loaned out, most fans were shocked by it. Put it that way. Whereas when other players get loaned, like, I can see why. He's not getting a game or whatever. But to be honest with you, I'd much rather be sniffing around the bins at the Etihad than dumpster diving near Fulham Broadway. Because when you're signing people like Willian and David Luiz and Gallas and people like that over the years, and then I'd much rather sniff around the Etihad sort of stadium, because obviously the quality they've got. And to be honest with you, I think Cancelo makes a lot of sense because he can play both fullback positions as well. I know he's right-footed, but he can play in midfield and play. And I think with Arteta, he does like players that can play multiple positions. I think that's why he's quite keen for Caicedo and people like that. Because I think as long as you can play, I don't really like the idea of like jack of all trades, master of none. But as long as you can play one or two positions excellently, I think he's going for those kind of quality players that can genuinely play multiple positions to a higher level. I'd be all for the Cancelo signing if we can get him, to be honest. And I'd probably have him as like again, he can. I don't know if he fills the centre half position, but he certainly fills both fullback positions. And if Tierney's going to go,
it could work.
Makes a lot of sense. Did you hear Roberto De Zerbi yesterday? I think we need to. I watched match.
Hit me with it.
I watched his press conference. It was he was basically asked a question. I can sort of like quote it, but basically he was asked by the BBC about Alexis McAllister. Is it his last game at Brighton? And he basically said, in quotes, "I think that can be the last game of Alexis and Moises. I'm really sorry. These are two great people and two great players." And what else did he say? It's the policy of Brighton is like this. I think it's right that they can leave, can change teams and play in a level higher. We have to find other big players to play with that Alexis and Moises. So I'm looking at that going, wow, it sounds like something is kind of done behind the scenes on that one. And it did feel like us and Chelsea were going for him in January. We felt like the more likely. So I don't know. It sounds like, unless he's spoken out of turn and maybe the Paul Barber, the CEO of Brighton, going to pull him and go, what are you saying? But he was very, very open.
Sounds like
it was nailed on.
It sounds like he's out the door then, doesn't it? I mean, I think the one thing I will say is I think we're going to pull the trigger really early in the transfer market this summer. I think we're going to have players in through the door, mid mid-June, end of June. I think it's going to be, we're not going to wait around. As soon as that, UEFA Conference League finals done, I'm expecting a phone call. We're going to be phoning West Ham, going, right, what's the number? What do you want? And I think it's going to be around about 95, 100 million. I think that they're going to want for Declan.
Yeah,
I think we'll pay it, because I think I think the signing makes a lot of sense. It's different from like a Nicola Pepe sort of signing. Declan Rice is proven on the international stage. He's proven in the Premier League stage. He's got great leadership. He's still young. It's a bit of it's a very low risk amount, a very low risk transfer to, in my view, especially with that sort of money. I'd feel very confident that it would work out, and he'd be integral to us going forward. He'd be nailed on starting 11, especially if Xhaka goes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think you pay that much for a player for him to sort of kick his heels on the bench.
Yeah.
Actually, news out this in the last hour has been that apparently Bayern Munich have made contact with Rice, and that they're prepared to pay up to 95.
I can't see it. I can't see him going. I can't see him going to Bayern. I don't think it's necessarily his bad. I don't think he's suited to it. They've got Kimmich that sort of plays that sort of defensive midfield role, and he can also play right back. I'm not sure that's the sort of guy that I don't think he would work there. I mean, I could understand why Bayern would want him. I mean, good luck to them getting that through, because they're run by their fans. It's very unlike sort of Bayern to go and splash that sort of cash. They're very good in the transfer market normally. So
it does sound quite strange, because they tend to buy German players from other German clubs, don't it?
They poach. They're sniffing around the Signal Iduna. They are, aren't they? They're sniffing around the back of the Signal Iduna.
But my main worry with Arsenal actually in the summer window is that I think we're very, very good at signing your 20, your 30, your 40 million pound players generally, but I do need more proof basically that Edu is able to get these bigger, higher ticket item deals over the line that involve a bit more money, a bit more complexity to them. I don't think he's obviously and also I've got this kind of a bit of a latent fear of like anything over 60, 70 million, and my sphincter starts tightening a little bit. And do you really? I mean,
you've been burned before. That's why.
It's like it's not your money, but at the end of the day, if Arsenal are going to invest such a big chunk in one area, that then potentially compromises another. Maybe they have to go for a second or third level target in another position, that may be a cheaper option, because they have to pay another 10 or 15 to get Rice over the line, for example. I don't think it's as simple as like it's not your money, because I think that that potentially could be a factor where we've got a limited amount of money. Like every club, they've got their budget, and that if it does go over a certain amount, Arsenal are very clear that they're just going to walk away. They couldn't get Mudryk over the line because of that kind of thing. And to be honest with you, obviously that's.
Yeah, but I think it's a different ball game when it comes to somebody like Rice. I mean, just touching on Caicedo quickly, I think that's a bit more of a tricky one. I don't know. I mean, I'd love it if we got him and Rice over the line, but the Caicedo one, I think Chelsea may be in for him. Although I'm hearing Chelsea are in for was that guy Ugarte that played against us?
After Sporting Lisbon, the central midfielder.
I think they're in for him, so maybe they're not in for sort of Caicedo. But I think Caicedo will be wanted by a few different clubs. So I'm not, I'm more confident of us actually getting the Declan Rice deal over the line, to be, funnily enough. So I think we put a lot of work.
I think we're going to say the same thing here.
Putting a lot of work in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that was spoken about a few months back, wasn't it? It felt like Arsenal were having a lot of conversation, but obviously as West Ham have got closer in the Conference League, I think Arsenal apparently have stepped back and not try to sort of ruin the relationship and the negotiation. We're coming in a bit strong now, but as you say, the morning after that final, I think they're going to be getting a phone call. But I don't know if you had anything to add on that.
I've possibly heard that maybe, again, these are all rumours and things I pick up like everybody else online, that there may be some player swaps potentially where, they look where West Ham sniff around our bargain, our bargain
clearance bin.
Now bins.
The Sambi Lokonga clearance bin.
The Sambi Lokonga, yeah. They can have Vieira if they want him as well.
Yeah, like I reckon go on loan to West Ham next season. Why not?
Yeah, Nketiah, you can take Nketiah. I'd give him that. Knock 20-30 million off the asking price for Rice. Maybe Balogun as well. I don't know. These sort of, yeah. So I mean, apart from those two, Caicedo and Rice, Cancelo I know has been linked of late because of given obviously what's happened at Munich, at City, sorry, where he was shipped out to Munich. Anybody else that we've been the Bowie one has obviously come to light recently. Yeah. I can't think of anybody else really.
Well, we've been linked with Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen. As like a wide attacker.
A bit hot and cold on that. I haven't seen much of him. I saw a couple of highlights a couple of weeks ago from him in one of the games against, I think he played Stuttgart. Looked okay, but 6 or 1.
Massively overpriced, I think, for
the kind of player he is.
Yeah, I remember watching him in a full game probably 2 years ago and thinking, God, he looked dreadful. But then I fell victim to the old YouTube highlights reel about 6 months ago, and I saw left foot, right foot dribbling, finishing and quite electric looking player. And I thought, okay, maybe I base it off one game, but I have to say, even Mustafi looked pretty decent on YouTube in the aftermath of his sign.
Yeah, but then, look,
overpriced, I would say. I do think we need something. I think we need either a centre forward or someone to challenge Saka's slot. But yeah, I don't want to get burnt. I mean, I think we're going to need to, the fact that there's rules around, having British players in your squad, and I think having Declan Rice, I think that's going to take up.
That's the marquee number one signing. And I think every Arsenal fan, will want him. Yeah. Just one thing I wanted to quickly talk about as well, which I don't know if you picked up on. We spoke about this, off the channel before, is like where Arsenal would fit in the Champions League where we would fit in the coefficient sort of ratings. So I read this morning because I sort of picked up the highlights from Milan versus Juventus, and our old boy Olivier Giroud has done us a solid. So they managed to beat Juventus, I think it was, in the penultimate game of Serie A, and they've now made it impossible for Juve to get into the Champions League. And as a result of that, it means that we are now going to be in pot 2 for the draw in the Champions League. Yeah.
I didn't know that could happen, that we can move between pots. I thought.
Yeah, because we're listed as 23rd, I think.
Who is it who qualified from Italy? It was like a slightly obscure team that doesn't always get into the Champions League, I think I read this morning. But I'm just rambling on here, but that's probably linked to it, and maybe that's kind of moved us up. Yeah, that's amazing if that's happened, to be honest.
Yeah, so that's happened. So we're in pot 2. So, we could we still could end up with a sort of group of death, if you like. We could end up with one of the big dogs like a Paris or a Barca or someone, and then us, and then you could end up with something like a Milan as well in our group, as a result of that. But it does mean that we're in pot 2 as a result of that. So that was
guaranteed now, I guess, because that was the last.
So Juve can't now qualify. Yeah, Juve can't get into the Champions League now. So we're definitely going to be in pot 2. So I'm mightily relieved about that, because I was really sort of panicking. I thought, oh yeah, Champions League, and then we end up with like a crappy draw. We could end up with like Real Madrid and Paris. It's just it's not good, not good.
No, but I mean, let's be honest. Are we going to win the Champions League? Probably not. Do I want us to go further in it? I do, because it does feel like it's more, because obviously if you qualify from each knockout stage, you get more money. So I want us to go. Obviously, I really want. I mean, I was at the final in 2006, and it's one of the most painful experiences I've ever had, to be honest. But I obviously want us to win the Champions League. I don't think I can go to my grave and sleep. Rest easy if we don't win that tournament at some point. But my expectations are that maybe the pressure will be off in that tournament. We'll go in and maybe we just show ourselves and play our stuff nice and flamboyant, pressure off kind of football, and see how we go. I mean the thing is, the problem is with teams like PSG that they're not tested week to week, and whereas I always fancy English teams generally to do quite well. I know PSG have got a lot of talent, but I wouldn't put it past us, to be honest. I mean, they've got a slightly aging. I mean, Kylian Mbappe's unplayable at times.
Well, yeah, they're going to clear them out, aren't they? Messi's going to be gone. Neymar will be gone, I think, in the summer. They're going to sort of reset the way that they're doing things, because it just hasn't quite worked out for them, has it?
Yeah. But at a high level, I don't expect us to win it next season. Like, for me, I want us to put a really good showing ahead. I want us to win we have to be winning a trophy in my view.
A trophy's got to be on the agenda.
Not chucking any bloody tournaments away next season. It's ridiculous. Not that the club would admit to that, but it kind of feels a bit like that from the outside looking in. But yeah, I don't really fear anyone in the Champions League. I think we can go and have a good go at it, to be honest. I mean, I don't think we'd be one of the favourites, but I think we'd
quarters, semis,
in our squad to do.
I think we can get to that, and then with you need a bit of luck as well with the Champions League. You have to. I mean, I think with a bit of rub of the green, we might be able to do something. And I do think. I do think in the next 5 or 6 years we could be in another final. I really do. I really do think that if we get the chance, if we get the summer right now, get a few more sort of key, components to what we've already got, I think we could be in a really strong position.
I think the club also needs to take out a restraining order on me if we get to the final of any European tournaments. I've been to 3 European finals and we've lost all 3. So I don't want it. I'm not even going to be in the same postcode as any of it, to be honest, because I just think I'll just end up sitting in the pub and just hope that it all works out well. We've been going now for over an hour. Should we play a quick game of? I don't think we've got time to necessarily run through the whole squad, but if we play a game of like, who are let's say you've got a budget of 250 mil. How many players are you bringing in, and in what positions, and who? And then maybe if you were to name 3 players that you think will go this season that are
all right,
maybe players we don't want to go, but maybe they're going to have to go. And I'm not talking about Nicola Pepe. I'm talking maybe about the ones that might hurt a little bit. Because I think this is going to be the first summer in a while where there's going to be players that have a bit of value. We've been probably one of the worst sides in Europe when it comes to selling players, to be honest. But I think now we've probably got a few players. And unfortunately, I think a few players may have to move on. And let's do it as if you were the manager, as opposed to what we think Arteta's going to do. Because I think we don't really know what he's going to do.
Shall I go first?
You go.
Right. So I'm buying into your idea. I think it'll either be a centre back or right back, depending on what's available. So there'll definitely be a defensive signing of quality, not just squad filler. Centre back, right back, whichever one is available, a decent sort of level of money. I think there'll be 2 centre mids, and one player we didn't quickly touch on was Gundogan, that we've been linked with as well from City. I mean, that would be unreal, but
excellent player, but again,
he's 32 though, and he wants a 3-year deal.
I'm not digging it, to be honest. I rate the guy, but again, the question you'd have to ask yourself is why, if City are prepared to let him go, doesn't that ring a few alarm bells? Like, I don't know. For me, it sort of does. But anyway, go on.
So 2 centre mids. Especially if we'll get to my outgoings as well. A couple of centre mids, and I think a centre forward of sorts. That will be my 4, I would say.
Okay.
Names, I would say Declan for sure. I think the Cancelo one's got some legs to it. Although if we're putting offers in for the Sasha Bowie guy, that to me tells me that we're maybe not prioritising that, and we're looking to put the money in other areas. So So I think a really good solid defensive signing, couple of centre mids, because I think we're good out wide, especially if Jesus, as we discussed at the top of the program, can sort of flick out a bit wide, and if Nelson stays as well, then a centre forward. I think they're the 4 areas if you were going to sort of pin me down. Shall I give you my outgoings?
Yeah, go for it.
I've got the squad list here right in front of me. Actually, I'm just on the site. So I reckon Kieran Tierney will be gone, begrudgingly. I love Tesco. I want him to stay, but I think he's gone. I think Holding will go. although I wouldn't necessarily say he's one of the sort of painful ones. I think, I think Smith Rowe is going to stay, especially after seeing him in the promos of our sexy new kit. I think he'll stay. I think Vieira will probably go out on loan. I think Granit Xhaka has played his final game for us, which I'm really quite sad about that, because I know he's had a bit of a tough time with it, in seasons gone by, but I think he's going. I think he's kicked his last ball in an Arsenal shirt. And the other one, I think maybe, either Nketiah or Balogun will go. One or the other will go.
That's what I've got written down here. Which one do you think will go, and which one do you want to go? Because they're both kind of like saleable, I think.
Yeah, I want Balogun to be given a shot. I think Nketiah, as we discussed, I think he's done really well in little chunks, but I don't think he's quite got the consistent level that we need to sort of keep going at that. So yeah, that's how I would sort of see things. I think Nelson will probably end up staying now, from what I'm hearing. I think he'll get. I think he'll sign a contract.
Quite nailed on, and actually, it's not a bad thing for all parties, because at the end of the day, he has been given opportunities off the bench, so he should get some game time next season. And it also means that if we do sell him in a year's time or so, then we'll actually get some half decent wedge, because I believe he would have gone to a tribunal having come through the academy, and we'd probably get slightly nominal kind of fee really around that.
Pittance, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of other outgoings as well, which we know will probably happen. Lokonga, Niles, Pepe, they'll be gone. Yeah. What about you then? Where do you see incomings and outgoings?
Well, I've made some notes here, and I've just completely started dreaming. I mean, it's the kind of money that I've got here. Let me just sort of tot up this. What we're talking about games here.
250. We've got to spend north of 250 million.
Do you know what I've got here? I reckon I've got 350 million pounds worth of player here that I've. But and every summer we sit down and we go, look at all these players we can sell that come back from loan. But the truth is, we never get anything for them. But in terms of selling, to be honest with you, I've got it much the same as you. I still think there's a chance for Emil Smith Rowe to go, because I know what you mean. Like, whenever they're featured on the kit launch marketing stuff, you kind of suggest they're part of the plans. But I did notice he was one of the more unhappy looking players on the videos around that. I think in a few weeks' time people forget about all that stuff anyway. At the end of the day, it's business. And
you think he's going?
I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. I think that it's quite clear that people like Tierney and ESR might go, because at the end of the day, there's been ample opportunities with Arsenal having lost the shot at the title in the last 4 or 5 weeks. I think that to me says, right, there's nothing really to lose now. There's enough of a buffer to 3rd and 4th place for Smith Rowe and Tierney to get games if they were in his plans. And there's either a falling out or there's a reason. I think if Villa came in or someone and put up 25 to 30 mil, I reckon we'd be tempted, to be honest. And then I think the same as Tierney. I'm not as wedded to Tierney as probably some people. I think he's got a lot of limitations. Don't get me wrong, with Zinchenko out, I'd much rather have Tierney playing there than Kivior, but I'm not wild, in terms of Tierney as being like a modern progressive. And I think when he tried to play in that more tucked in role at the London Stadium a few weeks ago, it was, I almost felt a bit sorry for him, to be honest, because it was almost like reminding me of Petr Cech when he was trying to pass out from the back with his.
You're asking him to do something he just can't do.
His crash hat
toolbox.
Yeah. So I mean, the 4 I've got here that I think will go. I think Xhaka looks basically nailed on, and I don't blame him. Apparently, he's being offered a 4-year contract. But as a 30-year-old, so what I find, it's a massive. It's a downgrade, but if you're a 30-year-old player and you're offered a 4-year contract, I can see why financially he would want to do that.
On the finances there of that, what I find incredible is that the sort of money we're looking to get for him. I mean, I know he's 30, but that's sort of all right age for a footballer. You'd think if he's getting a 4-year contract, the sort of money we're looking to get it's not that much. You're like 12, 13 mil or something.
I think it's 15 million euros, isn't it? Which is about 12.
12 mil. It's not. Why can't we get 20 mil for him?
I know. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is as well, we should have been able to get 15 mil last season, but after the season he's had, you'd think his stock. You think if someone could buy a player for 2 or 3 seasons, I think he's worth 20 to 25.
Exactly.
Personally.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm with you. I totally agree on the whole. Balogun to me looks like he's got more about him. He looks like he's got more sort of skills to his bow, strings to his bow in terms of what he can do. He can kind of play on the shoulder. He can drop in. I think Nketiah, he obviously, it's mad saying it when you think about how in January and February he was scoring those goals. But I just think I'm interested to see Balogun. He's consistently been scoring for the majority of the French season, and I just think he's got more. He's got more to his game. So they're the players: Tierney, ESR, Xhaka, and Balogun. I can see going. I can see Rob Holding going. I don't think Partey or Jorginho would go. If
Jorginho's
if Xhaka's going,
contract. Yeah,
and I think none of our attackers will go because they've either just signed up on long-term contracts or they're relatively new to the club. So I think that they might be the 4, and then obviously Maitland-Niles will go, and there'll be Nicola Pepe is going to be an interesting thing. We can't whether we tear his contract up or try and take 10 million for him, but I think having him around the club won't do. Ironically, he plays in a position we probably could do it. In terms of incomings, I would personally love to see Theo Hernandez from AC Milan coming in that left back slot. I mean, I just think he's an absolutely wonderful footballer. I do like
you've gone for named. Wow, okay.
Yeah, I've gone for like a
60 million's worth of player probably there.
So is Cancelo to be. I mean, I do like the versatility of Cancelo, the fact he can play at both fullback positions. But Theo Hernandez, he can play in midfield. He's an incredibly good left back. So if I could pick, when I think about Tierney as like an upgrade into someone like him, that to me is a massive upgrade. And then, maybe you think, wow, do you need Theo Hernandez and Zinchenko? Well, that's the title-winning caliber you need to get to if you want to challenge for the top competitions in the world. I would love to see Rice and Caicedo go, and if both of them came in, I wouldn't even be massively against it if someone like Jorginho went, or even I don't know.
I don't think he would. I don't think they would. I mean, I think Partey is probably tailing off a bit in his form. I mean, he's been off the boil for a good few months now, but he's getting the wrong side of 30, and maybe Caicedo is the sort of the natural successor, if you like, to a sort of Thomas Partey. And I don't think Caicedo would be too unhappy to sit on the bench for a couple of weeks in a row, sort of thing. I think there's given his age, he'd be happy to sort of fight for his place a bit more than say like a Rice that would be wanting to start every game.
Yeah. So, my worry is about just getting into a bidding war with Declan Rice. Like if Man United come in and Bayern are in and we're in. I do believe
100 mil, mate.
I do believe he will want to join us. To be honest, I think staying in London. I think apparently he really wants to work for Arteta, work under him, and obviously I think even though he's a Chelsea fan, I think you'd be mad on a footballing level to prioritise them over us at the moment. Although apparently Chelsea are in for another 300 or 400 millions worth of players this summer. So will someone at the FIFA just get on the phone to these guys and just drag them, throw them under the bus, please? It's ridiculous. Like if they went. I saw an article the other day. They're in for him, Victor Osimhen, and all these. I was like, hang on a minute. You've got to sell about 20 players before you can do all that. Absolutely mental. But I would like to get Theo Hernandez in, or get Cancelo maybe as a right back. I'm actually fine with the centre halves as they are. I'm happy to trim Rob Holding out and maybe have Ben White be able to slot. And I think we've got 4 really good centre halves, and maybe upgrade on the right back position. Tomiyasu's there, so maybe a Cancelo. I'd love to see Theo Hernandez, Rice and Caicedo. I think Caicedo does fit that right back bill, that centre midfield bill. I think again that versatility I think is key. And then up front, I'd love to see Victor Osimhen, to be honest, but I don't. Yeah, I think I don't know if we'll have enough cash down the back of the Champions League sofa at that point. But a player that I think might be quite gettable, that I think would add something to our game, would be Youssef En-Nesyri from Sevilla. I think that he's that kind of big, tall, strong in the air kind of centre forward, and he wouldn't cost the kind of money that a Vlahovic or an Osimhen would cost. I think you might be able to pick him up for like 40, 50 mil, whereas the other guys are kind of looking at kind of Osimhen will cost you in excess of 100 probably. Yeah. So I think if someone like En-Nesyri came in with Rice Caicedo and Theo Hernandez or someone, I think that's an incredibly good window. And then I think trimming off a few players from there. But I really want to see Arsenal get a big deal over the line.
Yeah,
I know the value of a player is not everything, but I do worry about our ability to, once it gets over that 70 mil mark. I remember us dallying over Nicola Pepe for weeks on end, and I just want Arsenal's kind of going. Another name to throw into the mix that I thought recently might be interested is someone like Mitrovic. Just not to kind of start in your week in, week out, but to have him as an option off the bench, but with his physics. I mean, I worry a bit maybe about his temperament, because he did kind of shove his head into Malacia yesterday at Old Trafford. He sort of like headbutted him and got away with it. So I do worry about like his fit around the training ground. But I like the idea of someone like maybe Mitrovic coming in as like potentially like a backup striker, someone who's got a bit of physicality, power, and can offer something a bit different that some of our players don't. But I'm not sure how gettable he is, but he wouldn't probably break the bank, to be honest. But yeah, I would be happy with En-Nesyri if we had to do a sort of a cheaper option as a centre forward, but and then maybe with the idea that Gabriel Jesus can sort of help fill the challenge Saka on that right hand side, maybe a bit. But it's an interesting one. I do think we need. I do think Saka. He's obviously an incredibly good player, but at a high level, I'm quite against players that kind of just pick themselves week in, week out. I think it's not particularly.
Need a little bit of you've got to push him a little bit, and be comfortable with dropping him for a game or two. It's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
So sounds good. I think we can keep our fingers crossed. We've just got to be decisive, I think, in the summer as well. Yeah,
there will be a few players leaving. I'm sure that maybe we don't want to leave. It's going to be a bit of a wrench, but as long as we see upgrades in these positions, and we sort of again the trajectory of it all is going in that in the right way, I think we'll be fine. I'm excited, to be honest, about things.
I can't wait.
I think we've got a really quite a lean squad at the moment in certain areas. I think it's now about adding important chess pieces onto the board that are going to really sort of elevate us to the next level. And then hopefully Man City will be relegated to League Two, and then walks away with the title next season. I have a dream. Right, should we move on to predictions quickly before we get out of here?
Yeah, let's wrap it up with the predictions. I think we both did all right this week.
I did. Oh, I had us to win 3-1.
You picked the score.
I picked the score, which is always
last game of the season, dead rubber. You picked the score.
Exactly, and you picked Arsenal will win and score at least 2. So that's your first one. So,
but in the bag.
So you've had seven errors and one win. I've had 2.
Yeah, I think
3.
You won that one.
I've had 6, so not far behind you, to be honest. But you've ended the season on a high, which is the same to be said about the players. But it's been nice talking to you again. And,
you too, man. Yeah.
For all the guys watching this, there will be some content over the summer. We're just going to sort of flesh out what that looks like. Obviously, the content at the moment has been quite weighted around that reviewing game by game, but we're going to be doing bits around transfers. We're looking and also diving a little bit into that mental health piece, which makes the Moody Gooners podcast what it is. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you over the summer period.
Yeah, thanks everybody for sort of tuning in. Hope you find it enjoyable, and we'll keep an eye out for the summer, and we'll catch you soon.
Take care, everyone.
All right, see you later.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.